Hey Magic players, my name is Jesse and welcome to another episode of the Mythic Tutor, the YouTube channel designed to help you improve your play on Arena. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a deck that has been a mainstay in the historic meta since the release of the Brothers War set. That's Izzet Charbelcher. Previously, one of the more powerful cards in Legacy and Modern, Goblin Charbelcher allows a deck without lands to one-shot your opponent so long as you can land and activate the artifact. And with the amount of double-sided lands we have access to in Historic, this makes this incredibly consistent. For players who want to try and win quick, and know they have a chance of top-decking a win on almost any turn, this is absolutely the deck for you. So, if you want to learn more about how to pilot this glass cannon, let's jump in. Alright, let's get into Izzet Charbelcher. Now, currently there are some other builds that add green and use elves and other mana sources to ramp into a quick activation of Belcher, but this video is going to focus on what I consider to be the most flexible and most consistent approach, the Izzet build. First, the namesake card of the deck, Goblin Charbelcher. It's a 4-mana artifact that when you activate it, it reveals cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Then, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of cards revealed this way. If you reveal a mountain, it doubles the damage. Then, after the damage is done, you put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in any order. This can be relevant, so we'll talk about that when we get into the deck tech. Now, there are a few key cards that are in basically all Izzet Belcher builds that help to develop the speed and consistency of getting to the combo. Those are Strike It Rich, March of Reckless Joy, and Irencrag Feat. But I think more important than the key cards in this discussion is the kinds of cards that can be a bit flexible, and why we may want to bring them in. As the historic meta has shifted over time, we've seen some cards become more and more relevant, and others fall out of style. And in an effort to keep this video evergreen, I'm going to talk about a number of cards that I don't currently play in my list. But before we get into that, for the build we're talking about today, if you were starting from scratch, you would need 27 uncommon wildcards, 21 rare wildcards, and 12 mythic wildcards, bringing it to an overall wildcard score of 43.2, which is mainly so high since we aren't playing any land cards that don't also double as spells. But first, let's get into Arena and check out the list as we talk about it. Alright, so here's the deck list that I have currently been running, and over in the sideboard are some important cards to note that are worth thinking about against different types of decks that you might see. Let's talk first about removal. In my current build, given the prevalence of Boros Energy, Elves, and other decks that try to go wide with creatures, I'm currently running Brotherhood's End and Anger of the Gods. But in situations where you're up against more aggressive or combo strategies, these cards are dead cards in your hand. I prefer Brotherhood's End because you have the option of using it to clear out your opponent's artifacts as well, but sometimes more copies of Anger of the Gods is better if you more frequently encounter decks that bring creatures back from the graveyard. But in each of those situations, you want to compare against spot removal that often costs less than their 3-mana board wipes. If you're more likely to face decks like the Mono-Green Devotion deck that we highlighted in the first episode, or some kind of Reanimator strategy, the board wipes do really nothing. So in those cases, individual, cheaper spot removal like Strangle can help deal with an early threat like Slickshot Show-Off that needs to be dealt with, including an early Karn Planeswalker if they've used the -2 ability first. It also handled certain stacks creatures like Drannith Magistrate or Strict Proctor, or something that's taking resources from you like an early Robber of the Rich. But again, they aren't going to help against a deck that's just trying to land a lot of creatures and go wide. In those cases, like how I have mine built now, we keep in the cards that hit all the creatures. So that gets us to our interaction options. Most builds of the deck run 4 copies of Jwari Disruption and 4 copies of Sink into Stupor, as both can be played as a land or used to protect your combo to stop an opponent. But there is some flexibility in the rest of the interaction we run. In my current build, I'm running 3 copies of an Offer You Can't Refuse, but this card is often swapped out for Pact of Negation when the meta is leaning more towards long games or control decks. An Offer You Can't Refuse has the benefit that it can be used to accelerate your mana by countering your own 1-mana spell, but it also can be used in an early turn to stop a combo attempt, where Pact of Negation can only really be used if it means you're going to land the Charbelcher on board in the same turn. I find that in the meta where we want to go as fast as possible because other decks are trying to do the same, an Offer You Can't Refuse is a better fit, so for now, it gets the spot. There are also a couple of alternative options to increase your consistency in getting Goblin Charbelcher on board or into your hand. I've chosen to run Indomitable Creativity as it pairs really well with our treasure creation cards and Irencrag feat, but there are other options for getting Belcher that might be a good fit as well. If you're expecting to see a lot fewer decks with spot removal, a lot of those builds run Skirk Prospector and or Goldhound as essentially another copy of Strike It Rich, and in those cases, Indomitable Creativity won't always get Charbelcher, so you instead need to run something like Plunderer's Prize to put it directly on the battlefield. I've essentially stuck with Creativity because it can be used aggressively in a pinch as a removal spell as well. There are also some other tutor options, such as Gamble and Reckless Handling, and if the decks you expect to see are all a bunch of other combo decks and you're trying to be as consistent and fast as possible, you could swap these in instead of Anger the Gods or Brotherhood's End. And again, a number of these cards will work in situations where you don't have wild cards to burn on the deck that you don't already have built. As for the overall deck, I'm running 3 copies of An Offer You Can't Refuse, 4 copies of Spikefield Hazard, 4 copies of Strike It Rich, and 4 copies of March's Reckless Joy. Now, Mark of Reckless Joy is a great card to turn what are otherwise dead red cards in our hand to dig for an access to a win attempt. It can also help us make sure we hit our land drops to keep our land count at a minimum. I'm then running 4 copies of Jwari Disruption, as I mentioned, 4 copies of Shatterskull Smashing, 4 copies of Sink into Stupor, and 4 copies of Sundering Eruption. For now, I'm on 2 copies of Anger of the Guards and 3 copies of Brotherhood's End. I'm running 4 copies of Prismari Command, and just to highlight this, it's simply so flexible that all of its modes are viable in different common situations that it really serves as an all-star in the deck. Indomitable Creativity, as mentioned before, is the best way we have to cheat Charbelcher onto the field. Irencrag feat can turn 4 mana into 7 to either cast Belcher and activate it, or cast Creativity, or in a pinch, cast Magma Opus if you have extra blue mana open. Goblin Charbelcher, obviously the namesake card, is how we usually win the game, so it's important to not discard it whenever possible, as losing it to a surgical extraction is almost always going to result in a loss. Finally, to round out the lands, I've included Songmad Treachery as a 4-of, because in the current meta there are a number of Eldrazi's that aren't terrible to steal from an opponent and attack with. Finally, like I mentioned before, 4 copies of Magma Opus rounds out the deck list to provide another instant speed option to make more treasures. Now, before we get into games, I want to mention something specific about this deck, and that is when to go into full control. I mentioned before that Charbelcher allows you to put the cards back in any order. There are some situations where activating Charbelcher doesn't fully kill your opponents. Maybe they have a Teferi's Protection, maybe they have a 9 lives in play, or maybe they just have more life than you have cards in your library. But in Arena, by default, it puts the cards back in an order that it wants them to be and passes priority. In those cases where you know there's a chance that they won't die to the activation, put on full control first, then activate it, as this will allow you to put whatever card you want on top of your deck. So if you know that you're going to have to activate it a second time, you might have some sort of interaction or removal spell that you can use in between. Similarly, if you want to use Offer You Can Refuse as ramp, you need to enter full control as well. To do that, hold control on PC, or again, hold your finder over your name icon on mobile and select full control. Then you can cast your Strike It Rich or your Spikefield Hazard or your March of Reckless Joy, pay for the spell but don't let it resolve, and then counter it with your own Offer You Can't Refuse to make 2 treasures. If you don't go into full control first, you won't have a chance to hold priority to counter your own spell. Finally, if you're playing Pact of Negation, you can actually use it even if you don't have the 5 mana the next turn to pay for it, so long as you can activate Charbelcher in response to the trigger. However, if you don't have full control on, Arena will resolve the trigger automatically and you'll just die before you can activate it. This can be extremely frustrating to lose a game that by all means you should have won. So with all that out of the way, let's get a few games in and I can talk about my thought process in selecting an opening hand and piloting the deck. Alright, so this opening hand doesn't have a Charbelcher or a Creativity, but we do have 4 untapped lands. We can accelerate with Offer You Can't Refuse, and we can use March to dig, plus we're going first, so I'm going to go ahead and keep this. Let's put this down first so that next turn we can cast the Offer. Okay, so as mentioned, we're going to drop this Shatterskull Smashing. We'll pay our 3 life, and we'll pass the turn. The plan would be to use the Spikefield Hazard on their turn, counter it with Offer You Can't Refuse. So then building up a number of creatures is going to really help out with us trying to hit them with Anger of Gods. I think getting all these exiled would be excellent. We are going to give them a couple cards, though. So, we enter full control. Spikefield Hazard will target this guy. Auto pay. Do not pay this one. And then we will counter it with our own offer. Perfect. There's some treasures. Okay, I don't really want to blow a treasure to clear these guys yet, as the board is not overwhelming. Plus, we got an Indomitable Creativity, so if we get into Irencrag feat, we can just go for it. So instead, we're going to cast another treasure creation, and we'll go ahead and pay for it this time. Perfect. So next turn, this gives us 3 open lands to hit them with Anger of the Gods, hopefully clearing whatever creatures they have. Perfect. And so long as we can survive another turn, we should be alright. Okay. So what we're going to do here, they're going to try to hit one of our treasures with Static Prison. To both keep them off the energy, which they would then use to pump into a creature, we're going to go ahead and tap this for a red. And I think I want to cast this March, but there's the only way to get our Charbelcher now is Indomitable, so I'm just going to let it go. Yeah, we'll just let it go. So now they didn't have 4 energy, so they couldn't make something bigger. If they had given, for example, Guide of Souls 2 counters, it wouldn't have died to Anger of the Gods. So we're now, instead, we go to our turn and we can kill all their creatures. So we'll do that. So next turn, this opens us up to casting this Indomitable Creativity to then Charbelcher out to kill him the turn after. Obviously, if we get an Irencrag feat, we just go for all of it at once. The only trouble is that we've only seen one of their Static Prisons so far, and they do have a full hand. So theoretically, if we were to cast our Charbelcher or get it out there otherwise, they could use that, and we don't have a counterspell to protect it. So I might wait and see what we draw, and maybe take a turn to March Reckless Jwari instead. Okay. So we play this untapped, we get another treasure that would get us to 7. We could go 1, 2, 3, 1, and then... Actually, we can just play this tapped. Enters tapped, we'll play this, so now we have 7 treasures to work with. So we could cast Creativity and activate Belcher in the same turn. So yeah, if we lose another treasure here, that could be a problem, but I think otherwise we might have this one. So he's going to make a creature, hit us for 4, swing in for 2 more, but then he's out of mana. So it seems good. Yeah, we'll go this. Untapped, pay 1, hit this treasure, do not pay that, that will use our last available mana, and then you hit him with it. Good game. Yeah, so in that game there, the Anger of the Gods showed just how valuable it is against a deck that's trying to build out a bunch of creatures on the board and slow us down enough that we could get our combo out. Even though our starting hand didn't have really quick access to any way to get Belcher out, we were able to get there. Okay, kind of similar to the last hand we played, we don't have a quick access to Belcher, but we do have a way to make a lot of treasure and draw some extra cards, so we're going to go for it. It's not imperative against this. Likely... Well, that says Zerta as well. Okay, yeah, they're likely playing Charbelcher themselves. So against this one, we don't necessarily need to drop this down untapped, although it would make us a little bit faster. We don't really have a way to then use it quickly. We'll probably save this for our third turn in case we are able to draw into the Belcher itself. So we play a tapped land. Yeah, they played a tapped land. They played their own Belcher. So for this one, I'm going to play the treasure. And then we'll play another tap land. If you notice, we played the treasure and then the game sort of stalled, even though they were tapped out. We can safely assume they're holding Pact of Negation. This gave them the opportunity to counter our Strike It Rich, even though that would just kill them. So next turn, if we draw Charbelcher, we'll just go for it with Defeat. If not, that's pretty good. Okay. We'll try that. Yeah, so they did have the pact. We'll go ahead and let that resolve. Again, this game wasn't as much of a display of how fast the deck is. It was more that we got to go first. But that's part of the reason why we choose to run an Offer You Can't Refuse instead of Pact of Negation. Because, for example, if he had an untapped blue land on that turn, he could have stopped us and then gone for it himself. Yes, he would have given us 2 treasures, but he wouldn't have just died on his turn. If he's got a way to get out of Pact of Negation with 1 red mana, 2 red mana, more power to him. Yeah, alright, there we go. So again, that was still relatively fast, right? We got our combo off on turn 3. Even though we had some ability to get interrupted, it ended up losing them the game anyway. Okay, so in this one we have both the feat and the creativity and a way to make 2 treasures with Prismari Command and Magma Opus, so we're definitely going to keep this one. We're not going first. We do have an Anger of the Gods in case they're trying to load up the board with a bunch of creatures. We will see. So on turn 2, we're going to play a land untapped, take 3, so that we can then make a treasure. Let's go for the blue one. Pass turn. So we are going against what is likely a more control-y kind of matchup in Azorius. Them missing a land drop there is likely not great for them. Sure. I think they're using this just as much to see what's in our hand as anything else. Right, because we're still 1 mana or 1 treasure short of actually going for it, because you need the 4 for the feat, and then you have to have a treasure left over. That said, they may have been thinking about just hitting us with the Stifle if they're holding 1, which they may be if they have certain types of land base. Yeah, let's drop this in untapped, or yeah, untapped as well. At this point, the life isn't really going to matter too much because they aren't trying to be aggressive. Plus, it gives us the opportunity to cast Prismari Command at the end of turn, draw a couple cards, make a treasure, potentially blow up an artifact if it matters. Yeah, they're kind of folding on this one, I think. So yeah, we'll make a treasure token and loot 2 cards. If they want to counter it, that's fine. Obviously, we would then just win on the next turn because we do have this 1 more untapped land here. You know, when playing against control decks, it really doesn't matter. We don't need Anger of the Gods. We have 1 copy of March to find some extra cards. We should have plenty of treasures. It's kind of tough. I think I'm going to drop this card here. We'll keep the treasure in case we need to go for it again later. But yeah, when playing against a control build like this, your life total really doesn't matter at all. If they're going to kill you, it means that they've already really knocked you out of the game by countering all your spells and reducing your hand size so much that you can't really recover. So at this point, just take 3 for most of the time the lands come down. Okay, in this case, I would rather not expose ourselves to getting countered after the feat. So we're just going to build up our board a little bit and go for it either with some backup from the March. or we cast it without having to use our Irencrag feat to make it work. So we've got 7 now. Probably should have put that in untapped so we can make another one. That's fine. Yeah. I'll go ahead and use this for 3, pitching one of our Irencrag feats. Oh, whoops. We'll just bluff a counterspell. I don't know. Should have hit 3, hit 2 instead. Really, we're trying to find another untapped land, which there's one. Yeah, that's rough. Okay, let's bring this in. We will pay 1 into this, target one of these. Yeah, we'll go ahead and pay for this. Which does leave our Charbelcher open on the next turn, but we'll see what happens. Getting hit with another Surgical Extraction would be trouble, in which case we might be on the Zerta plan. But if he doesn't have Artifact Removal right now, then we're in good shape. Not to mention we've got, yeah, see, didn't draw Artifact Removal, didn't have a way to deal with the Belcher, so we were going to get another turn, hit him with it. Yeah, they got mana screwed. Alright, opponent's going first. Our opening hand does not have a way to cast these. I'm probably going to mill this one because, yeah, we don't really have anywhere to go with it. Mulligan 1. Okay, now we have Feet and Belcher, 2 lands, so we need to draw another land, but we have the combo right here. So we're going to go for it, we'll keep 6, we'll send back the Creativity. Obviously if we draw a 3rd land, or any way to make a treasure, we can use this Prismari Command to get a little bit deeper. Perfect, okay, so we'll drop this first. They may be playing Elves, they may be playing Mono Green Devotion that we showed in the last episode. If it's Elves, this Brotherhood's End should really work well. Assuming they're not too big already. Okay, so we got another untapped land, and we just need 3 to cast the End, so we'll do this one. Yeah, if they don't get some sort of double champion effect to boost all these, they may just scoop to this Brotherhood's End, because that's going to be really rough. Alright, so this time we'll drop the blue land, and then we'll play this and wipe the board, and see what happens. Yeah, they may be done. I mean, they're done either way, I guess. So yeah, we'll drop this, we'll play the 3 life, we'll Irencrag's Feet, and we'll put in the Charbelcher. And it's game. Again, for this one, with a strategy that's trying to go wide with a bunch of creatures, obviously we only had the 1 board wipe, but the 1 was all that we needed, right? They dumped 9 cards out of their hand, it felt like. Anash, what's up, bud? Alright, we got Irencrag's Feet, but no Belcher. We do have Prismari Command and a Brotherhood's End, so let's go for it. Anash and I were chatting on Reddit about his deck list, so he knows what I'm playing and I know what he's playing, so it's all good. Thopterus is a good start. So his deck does try to go wide, but he has a lot of control elements in the deck. Usually plays a Retrofitter Foundry on the route now too. Which just means he can start turning his, turning his 0/2s into 4/4s, which is trouble for me. Again, it would be really nice to draw a Charbelcher, but instead, I think we're going to have to try to kill that Thopterist. This probably gets countered because he's holding open 2 mana, But on our end, it's worth a shot anyway. The Ornithopter is going to turn into a 4/4 with the Foundry if it doesn't get countered, but getting rid of the Thopterist is what's more important. Okay, yeah, we'll take that. We can also kill it with the Prismari Command here in a bit. Okay, so we don't have both parts of the combo, so we're just going to put one of these in untapped. Or, I'm sorry, tapped. And then we can save up this Prismari Command to try to kill this 4/4 before it kills us. Depending on what he plays, we can also just March of Reckless Joy some cards away and try to get into our win con, because we do have it if we are able to draw it. Or pseudo-draw it. Plus we do have the backup here, which is even better. Let's go ahead and do this first and see what happens. Destroy target artifact, make a treasure token. I like this play because now on our next turn we can use March of Reckless Joy on our main phase, which then allows us to use the cards that come from it for 2 turns. Depending on what he does, if he counters it, that's probably even better for us, because then we can maybe just go for it on our turn. We'll have to see. I think he's probably making the same calculation right now. Do I counter this, or do I let it happen? Alright, so we're going to take one here and see what he does with his turn. Now with the treasure and with the eruption, yeah, we can't really make a lot out of that one march, so we're going to go for it. Okay, so now we're kind of there with the creativity and the Irencrag feat. Obviously, holding up a bunch of mana is bad news for us, and we're not really threatened right now. So this one can turn the 1/1 into a 1/1 flyer, not a huge deal. Let's drop this in tapped. We will save the march for the end of his turn, and then we can go with a full hand of options. We may just make another 1/1. Okay, so dumped all of the mana into the 4/4. It's going to get us down to 7. Like I mentioned, we're going to, at the end of his turn, try to dump our hand into March of Reckless Joy. We can have 3 from our lands. We can get 2 more from this Shatterskull smashing for a total of 5. Again, he knows our deck pretty well, so he knows what our plan is. He's probably considering whether countering something like this makes sense, or waiting for the actual game-winning spell. I would say under most situations it's better to wait for the game-winning spell, but he just has no way of knowing what we actually have in our hand. And 5 cards is a lot. So yeah, depending on what we see here, we'll make a decision what to play next. One wrinkle here is if he does counter it with something like Archmage's Charm and essentially taps out, we can hit our own spell with our Offer You Can't Refuse. So yeah, we won't get our March of Reckless Joy, but we would get 2 treasures. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total. We wouldn't be able to go for creativity. Let's let this land. Let's see what we want to do. I think we want to do that. Yeah, blowing a treasure kind of hurts, but we get 1 back. And now if we draw a land that can come in untapped, we can just win. Alternatively, if we don't, we just lose. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, now we go for it unprotected. In this case, yeah, we'll just do 1. So if he's got a 1 mana counterspell, we get wrecked. But if not, we win. counter a Stifle here too. Good game, Anash. The games we just played really illustrate how potent Izzet Charbelcher can be within the current meta. Given its speed and consistency, there are a number of decks that, even though they're trying to win quickly with aggro, they aren't going to be able to win fast enough. On top of that, the cards that we have slotted in for the current meta right now, the Anger of the Gods and the Brotherhood's End, they really do some great work against Boros Energy and Elves and other go-wide strategies. But on top of its speed and consistency, we also had a couple games there that demonstrate the deck's resilience. We were able to go for our combo with protection from our cheap counterspells in one instance, and in another, we were able to shift our strategy altogether after getting interrupted, only to go for something different in the next turn. So, I hope this video was helpful in expanding your understanding of Izzet Charbelcher, and even if it isn't a deck that you're interested in playing yourself, if you learned something about the play patterns of the deck that helped you strategize better against it, let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to my channel below, and also follow me on Instagram. If you have questions about the deck that I didn't cover or cards you want me to think about, that's probably the best place to get a hold of me. In addition, if you have friends that play Historic, share it with them as well. If so, you can help them answer the age-old question, is it Charbelcher? I'm really not sure. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and let's win some more games together.